I suck, do I? Do I suck?
We're doomed from the beginning.
These videos are satiric reviews. You don't have to agree, but don't bitch about it.
Hey there, I'm the social injustice warrior Infuso, and I have a question to ask. What about Raven?
What about me? What about Raven? What a mark.
You know, that mopey, dark, depressive, poetic, who cut promos that just truly couldn't be duplicated. No matter how many times people in the backyard and on the indies want to try. You know who you are. You know who you are. We all remember the emo grunge lord from the Bowery, who made his name known in ECW, becoming a 4-time ECW champion and a 2-time ECW world champion. And those of us who don't remember that remember him for his time on mainstream TV in WCW, becoming a tag team champion with Perry Saturn, and becoming their light heavyweight and United States champion. I think these tenures are probably what he's known for the most. These are what he's best remembered for. I mean, you could even throw in his TNA run there if you really wanted to, where he became King of the Mountain and NWA champion. But do you know what Raven is definitely not remembered for? His time in WWE. Or more accurately at the time, his time in WWF. The Raven character would debut with the WWF, interfering in a strap match between Taz and Jerry Lawler. Why, you may ask? Well, so was everybody else. But it turns out the answer is because ECW. Because ECW. I never understood WWE's treatment, or the industry in general's treatment, of ECW. They didn't act as if they were competitors in a company, but instead as some kind of dysfunctional family with bloodlust that were weapon-obsessed. Which is probably why WWE booked their share of ECW wrestlers in their own hardcore division. Meanwhile, Raven coming to Taz's aid was never explained on TV as anything outside of their ECW connection. I don't think that they even crossed paths in that company. If I'm wrong, make sure to let me know in the comments and be as mean as humanly possible. That is the only way people understand things. I appreciate it. Thank you in advance. Raven would continue to team with Taz for a brief time, but was almost immediately thrown into the hardcore division as a solo act. His time as a hardcore superstar would seem successful, as he'd win the belt a grand total of 27 times. Which, granted, sounds impressive, until you remember that the title could be won anywhere at any time. It was less a championship and more of a golden hot potato. During his time in the division, he came to the ring with a cart filled with weapons, which unfortunately was actually one of the highlights of his run with the company. The highlight of his run would come at WrestleMania X7 when he faced Big Show and Kane for the belt. This would also double as the highlight for the championship itself. He also had some pretty memorable hardcore matches against Rhino, who I felt he always had good chemistry with. Well, you know, as much chemistry as you'd need for a hardcore match, which isn't really a lot, but you understand what I'm saying. They worked well together, alright? That's all I'm trying to say. Then there was the time a female ninja would help him obtain and defend his hardcore title for reasons. Unknown reasons, but reasons nonetheless. I'm sure there was This whole gimmick seems just beyond out of place, especially for Raven. Why would Raven need an insurance policy? And why would it be a female ninja? Eventually, that ninja would be revealed to be Tori. No, not that Tori. This Tori, Kane and X-Pac's ex-girlfriend. What was her relationship to Raven? Why was she helping him? Those questions will never be answered because after being unmasked and her identity revealed, the company dropped the angle, opting to completely forget it the next week. And honestly, I'd complain, but we're probably all better off. Raven would eventually start feuding with Perry Saturn again, with no mention of their past feud or history together. A story which would feature Raven stealing Terry Runnels' managerial services and destroying Saturn's one true love, a mop. I wish that was a joke, but we all know I'm not nearly that creative.
At one time, you could have had Moppy and me.
You know, for fun, why don't we take a look back and compare and contrast? Let's take a look back at Raven in ECW and WCW and compare it to his WWF run right here.
Oh no! Raven, don't go in a wood chipper! Moppy, I wouldn't put you in a wood chipper. I would never do that.
The scars that Luna left on Richard's back is nothing compared to the mental anguish I live with every day.
No, Raven, yes, you will.
Acceptance by others is a barometer of one's popularity.
No! You know, I've had enough of you, Moppy. I'm gonna tape your mouth. No! Don't tape my last son!
The unfortunate devour themselves, searching for annihilation. You see, we're all prisoners of our own nature.
I don't know about you, but that seems just as good, right? Right? No? Okay, well, don't tell Vince that. His partnership with Terry Runnels, like all creative aspects for Raven and the company, didn't last long, and soon he was teaming with Just Incredible. Because ECW. The two didn't really mesh well, and after a brief stint together, they went their separate ways. Honestly, they weren't even worth the mention. But you got it, because I'm extra.
You're welcome.
He was eventually demoted to the D Show, Sunday Night Heat, where he'd spent time as a color commentator, just as he had before during his first run with the company. And those of you guys who are angrily typing your comments, important to note that it was Scott Levy who was in WWF before, not Raven. This is the first time this character was in the company. That's why I said it at the beginning. Put the Twitter fingers away. Anyway, while this role made sense for Scott Levy, or Scott LeVay, whichever, the performer behind the gimmick, it made little sense for Raven. As a fan, it just felt really weird seeing him casually sitting at a desk, watching and commentating on the action in the ring, as opposed to being a part of it. Though eventually he would step back in the ring, where he'd develop a bit of losing streak before feuding with former arch-nemesis, Tommy Dreamer, over the Hardcore title. A feud that would see him lose his match, lose his role on Raw, and lose his skirt. Raven, I know you're an exhibitionist, but is now really a good time to disrobe? Following this loss, he was sent back to Sunday Night Heat, where he was eventually given the green light to proceed with the story he'd created, attacking 7 people, each who he'd consider committing a sin. Similar to the movie, Seven. This story, like the story of the ninja, wouldn't see its end, and would instead be disrupted prematurely. His last match in the company would be a loss to Jeff Hardy. And what's it they say about people who don't learn from history being doomed to repeat it over and over again?
He's turned this thing around on Raven, who's fighting for his career. A loss here for Raven means that he's gone for good, fired from TNA.
Oh, man. Raven's in grave danger here. Swanton!
Here's the pin, and the 3 count, and wow, Raven's gone.
What about me? Wah, wah, wah. What about me?
And that was Raven's time in WWF. Those were actually the more notable moments in what was a 3-year run. Raven stayed in a very creatively unsatisfying atmosphere, as he was being booked by people who either didn't know what to do with his character, or just didn't care. Looking back, it's hard to see this run as a natural evolution of the Raven character. Throughout his time at WCW and ECW, it felt like the character was naturally progressing. You know, outside of that whole Raven is a rich kid storyline, but that's probably a story for another time. But you didn't get that Raven in WWE. You got a very processed product. Raven was no longer the brooding brute who'd talk in depth in promos. He wasn't the madman with the tortured soul or the wrestler filled with resentment. Now he was just Raven, a resident weirdo. This Raven was a disappointing downgrade, and it wouldn't be until he joined TNA that he'd be able to somewhat redeem himself and pick up where he left off. His WWE run, while not the most miserable or saddest stints, goes overlooked for good reason. But hey, at least we got that theme song. So with that being said, I'm the Social Injustice Warrior V Infuso, and if you like the words that came out of my mouth hole and you too want to become a VTard, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's plenty more where this video came from. Follow me on Twitter because, hell, why not? It's not considered stalking if it's on the internet, am I right? And don't forget to join the Discord. I don't have anything catchy to add to that, but just join it. Just go do it. And if you have a free moment of time and a free $1 to spare, then head over to my Patreon, where for just $1, you too could help keep this boat afloat. And if you don't have that $1, but you do have a free moment of time, then hit the share button. It will help me out tremendously.
V-tart. Oh.
Hey there, guys. I want to thank you for watching the video all the way through, and then some. I guess you're extra too. But if you were expecting some kind of marvel after the credit sequence, then you shit out of luck, and I'm sorry to have disappointed you. But you're probably subscribed to this channel, so you're used to disappointment. I actually want to say I usually try not to make any videos on subjects that Brian Zane's already made a video on, and I guess this was an accidental exception. You see, I didn't actually remember his video until I was midway through with editing this one, and when I got up to the moppy wood chipper scene, that's when it clicked. I was like, oh crap. I think Zane did this. So then I had to go back and watch his video and make sure that mine didn't sound too much like his, and luckily I only had to take out 1 or 2 lines. But in advance, I'm sorry, and I'm going to try to not make a habit out of this.
What a mark.